You said, quote, Justice Kagan, will she be able to control the opinion's future distortion by her evil colleagues? Probably not, end quote. Who were you talking about?
Sir, I'm very skeptical. If it's a transcription, it was probably a transcription error. I don't refer to Supreme Court justices as evil in the classroom,
on
sir.
Your podcast, April 22nd, 2024, and you're an officer of the court, and you're here advising us to be respectful of federal judges, and you say they're evil members of the United States Supreme Court? Gag me with a spoon.
This government official walked into the Senate room thinking he could play the usual political games. He even smiled. But he made one fatal mistake. He forgot that Senator John Kennedy always brings the receipts. We are talking about billions of your hard-earned tax dollars completely unaccounted for. While everyday Americans are struggling to pay rent, these elites thought they could sweep this massive scam right under the rug. They thought nobody was looking. But watch exactly what happens when Kennedy corners them with one simple question they never saw coming. The moment Kennedy opened his folder, the official's smile completely vanished. What you're about to see isn't just a regular political debate. It is a masterclass in exposing total incompetence. Take a look at the exact moment this whole cover-up fell apart on live television.
I want to buy a bazooka, and I found a good deal on one in Europe. Can I buy it and own it and use it here in America?
Senator, I believe that falls under prohibitions in the National Firearms Act.
Since we have our ATF nominee in front of us today, I thought I'd ask you a little bit about our Second Amendment.
I would need to look specifically at whether a bazooka or a weapon analogous to it would fall under the protection of the Second Amendment using that test, if I were so lucky as to be confirmed.
Mr. Davis, did I hear Senator Cruz correctly say that you were a James Kent Scholar at Columbia, like Ms. St. John?
Yes, I'm in good company with Ms. St. John.
Okay. All right, so you were chief counsel to Senator Cruz.
Yes, Senator.
Senator Cruz is a pretty able lawyer himself. That must have been an interesting job.
I've had the privilege of working for multiple bosses who were phenomenal lawyers. Senator Cruz is the utmost lawyer as a Supreme Court practitioner. He was phenomenal. And I've had also the pleasure to work with many other attorneys. The judges for whom I clerked were both fantastic. So I've had a lot of great mentors and examples throughout my life and career.
In your job, were you around Senator Cruz a lot?
Yes, Senator.
Okay. We talk a lot about heroes in America, don't we?
Yes, Senator.
People who tolerate Senator Cruz on a daily basis are the real heroes, aren't they?
Senator, I have nothing but positive things to say about working for Senator Cruz. He was a phenomenal boss, and I just loved the experience.
Senator Cruz is my friend, man. I realize that's a questionable life choice, but he's my friend. Judge Wolf, you went to Baylor.
Yes, Senator.
We at LSU hired away your women's basketball coach, didn't we?
Coach Mulkey.
You understand we're not giving her back?
I understand.
Okay. Ms. St. John, what's a universal injunction?
Universal injunction refers to an injunction that applies universally beyond the parties to the case.
The Supreme Court has recently had something to say about universal injunctions, has it not?
Yes, Senator.
What did the Supreme Court instruct us?
Well, in Trump v. Casa, the Supreme Court held that universal injunctions are disfavored and courts are limited to awarding complete relief as to the parties before the court.
Did the Supreme Court talk about class actions in its opinions?
No, Senator, not directly that I recall.
Okay. Do you think one of the arguments, as I understand it, for universal injunctions, well, it's both an argument for and against, but that it impacts more than just the plaintiffs before the court. Is that correct?
Yes, Senator.
I've heard the argument made that a substitute, some would argue a more efficient substitute for universal injunctions would be a class action lawsuit. What do you think about that?
A class action does allow relief beyond the named representative plaintiff. The class actions have a lot of additional safeguards set forth in Rule 23. And so, it does allow large groups of plaintiffs to come together in one case in a way that may not be, to seek relief in a way that bilateral litigation may not allow, but it does have additional protections.
Okay. Let me go back to Mr. Davis. Since we have our ATF nominee in front of us today, I thought I'd ask you a little bit about our Second Amendment. I want to buy a bazooka, and I found a good deal on one in Europe. Can I buy it and own it and use it here in America?
Senator, I believe that falls under prohibitions in the National Firearms Act, but let me speak more generally, because I think that's right, but let me speak more generally to the Second Amendment question, which I believe is what you're getting at. There is a fundamental right enshrined in the Second Amendment to keep and bear arms.
Right.
And the Supreme Court has said in Heller, written by Justice Scalia, that is a personal right. It's not a right that is tied to being in a militia. It is a personal right that includes for defense. The Supreme Court has since elaborated on that doctrine, including in Bruin and most recently in Rahimi. It is made clear the test for Second Amendment rights is whether the right falls within the text, history, and tradition of this country. And so I would need to look specifically at whether a bazooka or a weapon analogous to it would fall under the protection of the Second Amendment using that test, if I were so lucky as to be confirmed.
Well, under Heller and Bruin, do I have unfettered discretion to own any kind of firearm that I want to?
There are certain exceptions that are listed within the decision in Heller. And for example, machine guns fall under the National Firearms Act. So there are certain exceptions to what arms can be owned. But again, I would go back to the text, history, and tradition test if a case were to come before me as a judge that was asking that question.
Okay. I'm sorry I didn't get to ask everybody questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Whitehouse. Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Sakata, welcome. Thanks for coming to my office to talk about ballistics tracing. I believe we agree that when local law enforcement roll up to a crime scene and find, for instance, a cartridge in the sidewalk, the quicker that those local police officers can identify the firearm that left that cartridge, that leaves distinctive markings on a cartridge, the better off they are. And that can both help officer safety and investigative effectiveness. Is that correct?
Good morning, Senator. Thank you for your time yesterday. And yes, you are correct. You're referring to NIBIN, the National Integrated Ballistics Information Network.
Yep. I look forward to working with you on trying to make sure that the database is robust as possible and that access to the information is as quick as possible. In a crime scene at night on a street, you want to know as quickly as you can where that came from. And so I'm glad that we agree on that and look forward to making further progress. Ms. St. John, it looks to me like pretty much every one of your employers has been funded by the Koch political operation. By that, I spell it K-O-C-H. Leonard Leo's political and judicial influence operation, or Donors Trust, which is kind of the identity laundering operation for the Koch brothers and others. Given that, how are you going to deal with cases that come before you in which, let's say, the Kochs have an interest? Would you recuse yourself? You seem to be essentially a product of their investment, and now you'll be making decisions that could affect their business.
Senator,
or their politics?
my current organization, Hamilton Lincoln Law Institute, does not receive any funding from the Koch brothers. I've never received any indication I need to do any work consistent with their wishes to the extent they were a donor to any organization I've ever been a part of. And as to recusal, I would carefully look at each case and look at the relevant factors for recusal.
Well, the Competitive Enterprise Institute seems to get lots of money, $10 million from Donors Trust and Donors Capital, $400,000 from Koch organizations. Its president became Donors Trust's president. The Hamilton Lincoln Law Institute got at least $1.25 million in litigation grants from Donors Trust. Independent Women's Forum, $300K from Leonard Leo's Judicial Education Project, more than $13 million from Donors Trust. So if you think that that's not something that you need to be concerned about as a judge, all that history, then I'm very disappointed to hear that. Mr. Davis, how about qui tam cases? You say they're unconstitutional. A qui tam case comes before you. Are you going to recuse yourself based on your stated opinion that that cause of action should not exist?
Senator, in a capacity not as a nominee, I spoke about qui tam actions. However, there's binding en banc precedent in the Fifth Circuit. If a qui tam case came before me, I would follow that binding circuit precedent.
Yeah, but there's obviously a certain amount of lien in judicial decisions. You're not automatons out there. How would you convince a qui tam plaintiff that you're not going to lean in every subordinate decision along the way against that party's interest because of your expressed views on qui tam?
Senator, in the past, I offered views on one aspect, which was the constitutionality. That is something I have spoken publicly on. But as a nominee and as a judge, if I were so lucky as to be confirmed, I would follow the law faithfully. I would follow all.
Yeah, I get that. Faithfully. I get that. But I've also been a lawyer for a long time now and know a lot of judges, spent a lot of time in court. And anybody who spent a minute in court knows that the judge is not an automaton. And everything from procedural rulings to scheduling rulings to undecided elements of a case allows the judge very substantial leeway. And if you're not prepared to listen to a qui tam plaintiff fairly because you think they're there unconstitutionally, that's something that you should consider as a judge, shouldn't it, you?
Senator, I disagree that I could not listen to them fairly.
You've said that the cases would be unconstitutional.
Senator, if I were so lucky as to be confirmed, I would follow all precedent, and that includes precedent in the Fifth Circuit that makes clear that qui tam actions are constitutional. I would follow that fully and faithfully.
Yeah, right.
You said you're a textualist.
Yes, sir.
What does that mean?
It means you follow the words of the text of the statute.
Don't you want to look to the problem that the legislature was trying to solve? Why do you want to be a slave to the plain words that reasonable people can disagree of? Why don't you just start with, I've got a statute, let me see what problem the legislature was trying to solve in interpreting the statute.
I have done that, Senator, and I don't disagree with that approach, but...
But you said you were a textualist. You don't even get to that approach.
Senator Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Coleman, have you ever been to Manhattan?
Manhattan, Kansas?
No, sir, Manhattan, New York.
I have not.
Okay. Are you familiar with, maybe you've seen it in the movie, 3rd Avenue, Midtown?
Only by reputation.
Okay. Well, it's a major east or north-south traffic corridor. Very busy, a lot of traffic. I don't know if you saw the news yesterday, but about 200 protesters in New York sat down in the middle of 3rd Avenue, completely blocked traffic. They were wearing T-shirts that said, "No war, no ice, free Palestine." Completely shut everything down for about an hour. Police had to come in. They arrested some of them. This is New York. Nothing will probably happen to them. But the point is, it blocked traffic severely. Let's suppose a medical transportation service was trying to get a heart to a transplant patient at a hospital nearby. And obviously the traffic jam delayed him and the patient died. You with me?
Yes, Senator.
All right, does the patient's family have a cause of action against the protesters or the leader of the protest?
In any hypothetical, I would hesitate to completely prejudge the situation without knowing all of the facts.
Come on, counselor. Give me your legal opinion. This is a first year law student question.
I believe they would, more than likely. I think that would be a matter.
What would be the issues that would arise? I just want to understand how you think.
Sure. I think that would be.
If you're defending the leader of the protest, what's the first thing you're going to say?
If I'm defending the leader of the protest?
Yeah.
I would probably argue about causation and foreseeability. I mean, that would be really a state law negligence.
What do you mean causation?
Well, for any negligence claim, one of the elements is you have a duty to somebody. Did you breach that duty? Did you cause them an injury? And part of the duty causation calculus is how foreseeable that injury
was. What's the difference between legal causation and proximate cause?
So
cause in fact and proximate cause.
Yeah. So cause in fact is the specific cause of death or injury rather. And in this case, it would probably be whatever heart ailment this poor person that you've described had would probably be the cause in fact of his death. But proximate cause does not always have to be the cause in fact, and there can be multiple causes. So a proximate cause is, but for this thing happening, this injury may not have occurred.
Okay,
and
I got it. Good. Judge Powell, you said you're a textualist.
Yes, sir.
What does that mean?
It means you follow the words of the text of the statute.
Okay. What if the text of the statute's not clear? What do you do?
Well, one of the approaches that I do use is I want to look at the language in context of the statute as a whole and try to harmonize the language. I may go to dictionaries to help me find definitions of words.
Well, how ambiguous does the statute have to be before you're going to look to secondary sources?
Well, ambiguity means the language is subject to two or more interpretations, and so if there's
reasonable interpretation.
Correct.
Well, I mean, does it have to be 50% ambiguous, or 52%, or 51%?
Well, I'm not sure how to apply the 51. To me, ambiguity
That's what
is
I'm asking you, is how you apply it.
Well, ambiguity means that the words that are used are susceptible to two or more different definitions. So I don't know whether that's 50%.
Why do you go, I'm not suggesting you're wrong, but why do you go through that exercise? Why do you want to spend hours agonizing and debating how many lawyers can dance on the head of a pen to try to decide whether it's ambiguous? Why don't you just go look at the statute and also go to the secondary sources?
Well, that's what I do, Senator.
But you only go if it's ambiguous.
Well, because the plain words of the words, the plain meaning of the words in front of you are what guide you. And you apply the common understanding of the words.
I guess what I'm asking you is, Your Honor, why? Don't you want to look to the problem that the legislature was trying to solve? Why do you want to be a slave to the plain words that reasonable people can disagree over? Why don't you just start with, I've got a statute, let me see what problem the legislature was trying to solve in interpreting the statute.
I have done that, Senator, and I don't disagree with that approach, but
you said you were a textualist. You don't even get to that approach unless the words are ambiguous.
Correct. I agree with that. And
I know. So which is it?
Well, are
you always a slave to the words and the debate about plain meaning, or do you step back and go, plain meaning or not, I want to look at the problem the legislature was trying to solve? Which is it?
Well, Senator, the best way to understand what the legislature
Yeah, but
intended.
first, our chairman's a great guy. He's like awesome. He's going to cut me off anyway. Tell me which one you use.
Well, Senator, as I'm trying to say, when you're trying to discern the legislative intent, you first look at the words the legislature itself used, and
Yeah,
you apply
okay.
the
And let's
common,
suppose
ordinary
they're
meaning.
plain. They're plain to you.
I'm sorry, what?
Let's suppose the words are clear.
Okay. Then
Why you would stop there, right?
you apply the words, yes.
Okay. Why? Why don't you go, well, I want to get this right. So let me adopt a belt and suspenders approach, even though the words are plain. Let me delve into the legislative history and try to understand what problem the legislature is trying to solve. Why not do that?
Because the language tells you what it is they're trying to
Where's it
do and what
written
it is they
you
want to
can't
solve.
go further than the language of the statute?
Well, again, Senator, if there's some doubt when you look at the
Even if
words in
there's no doubt.
context,
Not a doubt in your mind.
that's why because you're carrying out the will of the people. It's the will of the people that's
So
expressed in the pages.
you're trying to apply a statute passed by the legislature.
Correct.
Okay. Can I ask one more? Tell me how to say your name. Your last name, sir?
It's Mativi, Senator.
Mr. Mativi. I'm 17 and I go to work for McDonald's. I go to apply for a job and I'm wearing a burqa. And the McDonald's manager says, I really want to hire you, but we don't allow religious symbols at my restaurant or at our restaurants. What does the law say about that?
The law prohibits the application of a religious test applied by the government, right, not by private employers. So I would say that's the basis of.
You sure about that?
Well, it depends on whether, I mean, there's other factors, right?
Let me just ask you, can McDonald's say, we have a policy against religious symbols and you can't wear a burqa? Who's going to win, McDonald's or the person wearing the burqa?
Honestly, Senator, I'm not sure who would win in that situation. I'd need to know more
I
facts.
appreciate your honesty. Thank you. Thanks for your indulgence, Mr. Chairman.
Anything for you, Senator.
I especially appreciated your commentary. I listened carefully, Eric, and you're right about courage. It's easy to play to the crowds, but when the going gets tough and you got to follow the law, and it's not going to be popular, that's what the rule of law is all about.
That's right. That's right.
Who's going to make the decision about which of these specific types of fraud you go after?
Senator, in the course of building out investigations, we work directly with the federal investigators.
Who's going to make the decision? Counselor, I got 5 minutes. No disrespect. You're a good guy. Answer my question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Counselor, congratulations on your nomination. What kind of fraud are you going to go after?
Senator, the core that I would say that we're going to go after within this division initially as we build out will be taxpayer-funded programs such as Medicaid, such as the SNAP program, and other subsidiary HHS, USDA, et cetera, programs. We will be putting our view there.
Who's going to make the decision about which of these specific types of fraud you go after?
Senator, in the course of building out investigations, we work directly with the federal investigators.
Who's going to make the decision about which specific types of fraud you go after?
Senator, with respect to this role, I believe I will be working with the Deputy Attorney General and the Attorney General to figure out how we prioritize this mountain of fraud.
So it's you, the Deputy Attorney General, and the Attorney General?
Yes, Senator.
Okay. So if you've got 10 cases of clear fraud, you and the deputy and the attorney general will sit down and decide which ones to prosecute and prioritize.
Well, Senator, when it comes to the case level, that work happens within our line AUSAs.
Counselor, I got 5 minutes. No disrespect. You're a good guy. Answer my question.
At the programmatic level and as we build out the division, those decisions will be made with the Deputy Attorney General and the Attorney General. With respect to specific case questions,
Do you already have cases in mind?
I do not have cases in mind, Senator.
Okay. So suppose we can agree. I think that the federal taxpayers, American taxpayers, put up between 50 and 90% of the money in the Medicaid program. States love it. Let's suppose that you have a governor who knows there's fraud in his Medicaid program, but he ignores it because he would lose all this federal money. Is that fraud?
Senator, I think that's a form of fraud, waste, and abuse. Whether it fits within the contours of criminal culpability,
Is that the sort of thing you're going to look at?
Senator, as referenced earlier, we will be looking at the full scope of fraud.
Answer my question, Counselor. Is that the sort of thing you're going to look at?
Senator, I do plan to look at the full range of potentially criminally culpable actors.
Let's suppose, are you familiar with an inspector general?
Yes,
I'm sure
Senator.
you are, because you're a good lawyer. Let's suppose, and you're aware, I'm sure, that inspectors general act independently of a cabinet secretary under the law. I think it's 5 U.S.C. section 417 can only overrule an inspector general if what that inspector general is doing is dramatically hurts the U.S. interests or some sort of pretty language like that. Let's suppose an inspector general comes in a cabinet secretary or a senior official says to an inspector general, I want to know what cases you're investigating. And you have to tell me. And if any of them are going to impact me in terms of my reputation, I'm going to pull you off of them. Is that fraud?
Senator, I would see that as a form of conflict of interest to the extent that that'll look bad for the cabinet secretary.
I know that. Is that the sort of thing you're going to get involved in?
Senator, I will be focused on criminal prosecutions. That will be my focus in identifying fraudsters operating, taking money.
Let's suppose the Census Bureau tells you that 11% of the American people are poor, and we get to decide the definition. But we're going to exclude about 80% of the federal benefits that we give to folks in determining this 11%. So that instead of 11%, we really have only 1% of the American people that are below the poverty level. Is that fraud? Is it fraud if a cabinet secretary knows that and doesn't do anything about it?
Senator, there are a range of criminal tools that the Department of Justice can bring to bear.
Is that fraud?
Fraud in the classic sense of executing a scheme to defraud a government program, probably not.
Is it right?
No, it is not right.
Is it moral?
No, it is not, Senator.
Is it ethical?
Senator.
Does not seem ethical to me, Senator.
Thank you for your indulgence, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Ronald.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. McDonald, I asked the following two initial questions going to fitness to serve of all nominees to appear before any of the committees on which I sit. I will ask you the following two questions. Since you became a legal adult, have you ever made unwanted requests for sexual favors or committed any verbal or physical harassment or assault of a sexual nature?
No, Senator.
Have you ever faced discipline or entered into a settlement relating to this kind of conduct?
No, I have not.
Mr. McDonald, it's more than ironic that a president guilty of 34 felony counts of fraud proudly announces a, quote, a war on fraud, places J.D. Vance, Vice President Vance, in charge, and nominates you to lead a new anti-fraud division. Now, we all acknowledge that that fraud needs to be prosecuted and that there is a lot of it, and you're now going to head the division. And if fraud, as you recognize, is such a massive problem, and there are other Democratic senators who have raised the concern that if fraud is such a massive problem, why would the very divisions within the DOJ that were in charge of prosecuting civil and criminal fraud, why were they disbanded? And again, I mentioned going after crypto crime, which is massive, going after tax fraud, also massive. So one wonders, I think you can understand why a major concern of ours would be how independent your anti-fraud division will be when all these other divisions that were supposed to be prosecuting fraud and all of the experience that the attorneys there had, they get disbanded, but you get created, and your division, not you get created, but your division will be followed by J.D. Vance. So it's kind of hard to understand how it is that you will be so independent of the president. We have a president who expects the people he nominates to do his bidding, including to let him do what he wants, including members of the U.S. Supreme Court. So, in spite of the fact that the DOJ mission statement, which I just checked on today, says that it is characterized by the values of independence and impartiality, it's hard for us sitting here to think that you can be all that independent. So if the president, vice president, or any member of the White House, so not to mention Pam Bondi, asks, suggests, or hints to you to investigate any of the president's perceived enemies, would you do so? Yes or no?
Senator, respectfully, I disagree with much of what you asserted in the lead up to that question.
Well, the lead up to the
professionals in the Department of Justice who are working on crypto fraud, for example, are in the Department of Justice.
This is not I'm reclaiming my time. The setup to the question goes to the impartiality of this new division that has been created to combat fraud. And I think that there are enough concerns raised as to how independent you will be. And I'm just asking you, if the president says, go after so-and-so for fraud, would you do so? Yes,
Senator,
or no?
Senator, as I was mentioning, the individuals who were doing crypto fraud, that work is still ongoing within the Department of Justice.
You are not answering my question, which says to me that sadly, even though you have up till now been an impartial, what I understand is relatively impartial and non-political, you're now placed in a highly politicized division. And we already know that the president considers the Department of Justice to be his law firm, Pam Bondi to be his lawyer. You are down the chain. I don't see how you sit there and tell us that you're going to be independent, much as you might want to be, but I have concerns about that. We have a president who accepted a $400 million plane from Qatar. Does that sound to you like a bribe or a fraud to you?
Senator, with respect to your prior question, I am a career federal prosecutor.
This question?
I am a career federal prosecutor. I follow the facts. I apply the law. Those are the two considerations that come into play for me in every case, including in the great state of Hawaii, where I served as a special prosecutor on very significant cases in your state and protected the community and the citizens of Honolulu.
You follow the facts Great. That's what we want. That's what I would expect a prosecutor to do. You follow the facts, you apply the law, you prosecute the people that are committing fraud, not doing the bidding of a president who will expect you exactly to do what he wants and to go after the people he considers his enemies. We know that to
Senator
be true.
Moody.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Ask Mr. Mark a question, and I'll shut up if Josh comes in. But this is something that's always interested me. I mean, the purpose of the First Amendment, in part, is so people power cannot be used to force an individual or a minority, not a racial minority, but a minority from expressing his or herself. Is that a fair?
Yes, Senator, it sounds relatively fair.
Here's my question. In today's world, who do you think has more power? The state of Louisiana or Google?
It would depend on the definition of power, but from...
I would bet Google.
It is a
I'm not
very
trying
large
to trick
company.
you.
Yes, sir.
Does it make any sense to you that the state of Louisiana, that people are protected against the state of Louisiana? They should be. I'm not disagreeing on the basis of the First Amendment, but Google can do whatever the heck it wants to.
As a private enterprise, it is not afforded the same, people are not afforded the same protections from the First Amendment from Google as Louisiana.
Yeah, but in today's world, should we, is the distinction between government and private actors, does it make any sense anymore? Shouldn't the distinction be, this is really a question, between government and private entities, depending on how much power they have?
To get down to the root of the question, yes, I do think as companies become larger, become more powerful and more spread, there's the opportunity for them to exercise a lot more impression and control over the public. Whether or not the legislature should act and potentially put rules in, that would be something outside the confines of a judicial nominee, and I wouldn't comment on that.
But see, I'm not sure we could act, because if we tried to say Google has as much power as the federal government, I don't mean to just pick on Google, but let's substitute artificial intelligence, which is in its infancy, but it's clear that it's going to be powerful. And I think artificial intelligence has great potential to make our lives better if it doesn't kill us first. But it is going to be powerful. And why shouldn't we have a First Amendment that protects people's rights vis-a-vis the owners of artificial intelligence?
Well, to take you back to the Constitution in general, specifically the First Amendment, it can only bind and does bind governments.
I know, but I'm asking you, should it? If I try to pass a statute that says, hey, Google is more powerful than just about any state and most countries, the Google's going to quickly file suit and say, under the Constitution, you can't regulate me like that.
And as an originalist, as a textualist, to look at that, I don't think that would have been the founder's intent to apply it to that. There may be other avenues, whether the Commerce Clause or things like that, to incorporate different types of regulation, but I don't think that would be the way it should be.
You think, I'm going to hush in a second, Mr. Chairman. I mean, I get the originalist argument and the textualist argument. But this is really not a suggestion, it's a question. Is this one of those situations where the founders never contemplated that we would have artificial intelligence or a Google? Are we making a mistake being a slave to originalism and worshiping at the altar of originalism when we ought to look at the world as it is, not as it was at the time of the founders?
I don't believe so, Senator, in the sense that although I'm confident did not contemplate AI or a Google of some sort, there were large companies back then, there were conglomerates back then, there were large, powerful industries back then.
Okay. All right, I could go on, but I think Chairman Grassley's going to probably move my office to Richmond if I keep going. Thank you, gentlemen.
And you'll receive a lot of written questions, as you know, and the record will be submitted until, those questions can be submitted until May the 6th at 5 p.m. Meeting adjourned.
What we just witnessed isn't just an isolated incident of a government official getting tongue-tied. This is a glaring symptom of a much deeper, systemic problem rotting away at our institutions. For years, these agencies have operated under the assumption that the American public simply isn't paying attention. They use complicated jargon, hide behind bureaucratic red tape, and treat billions of tax dollars like monopoly money. But when Senator Kennedy dismantles a witness like this, he does something incredibly rare in Washington. He forces accountability into the spotlight. He asked the exact, blunt questions that regular, hardworking Americans want answers to. And the fact that a top-tier official couldn't answer basic questions about accountability tells you everything you need to know about where your money is actually going. Pause. Think about the sheer scale of what was exposed here. While inflation continues to squeeze the middle class and families are forced to make tough decisions at the grocery store, millions are being funneled into broken systems with absolutely zero oversight. The arrogance displayed before Kennedy dropped the hammer is exactly why trust in these institutions has hit an all-time low. It raises a terrifying question. If this is what happens when the cameras are rolling, what in the world is going on behind closed doors? This hearing proved that without fierce, aggressive questioning, these multi-billion-dollar scams would continue to go completely unnoticed, protected by the very people put in power to stop them. The mainstream media wants to sweep hearings like this under the rug, but we refuse to let them. It is up to us to keep the spotlight on this corruption. I want to know your thoughts. Do you think this official should be forced to resign immediately after this disaster? Drop a comment below, because the algorithm needs your voice to push this video to more people who need to see the truth. If you believe in accountability and want to see more elites get exposed, smash that like button and hit subscribe right now. But the story doesn't end here. Kennedy isn't done yet, and his next target is facing even bigger allegations. Click on the video on your screen right now to see the next massive scandal Kennedy just blew the lid wide open on. You do not want to miss this one. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you over there.